Anderson, for those of you who perhaps do not know, Director of the Community Action Center. But my purpose here today is basically just to listen to any constituents or anyone that might have a question about repairs of NYCHA. I heard that in the previous meeting, people had questions pertaining to repairs, ticket numbers, etc., nothing pertaining to the actual training. So I'm just here to sort of divert some of those questions and take those inquiries back to our unit for we could be helpful.
Thank you, Antierson. My name's Ed Sokolowski. I'm the Executive Director in BIST, responsible for the checkbook application. I will be monitoring the chat related to questions pertaining to the demo. And then at that point, Nicole, I will interrupt her presentation to ask the questions. Nicole, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Nicole Boone. I am the program analyst for Checkbook. Just want to give you a little history on the NYCHA portion of Checkbook. Back in 2014, NYCHA has been going through a lot of problems. So the chairman of NYCHA and the controller at the time got together and had an agreement that NYCHA would support more transparency by becoming part of the checkbook process. So we took the steps in the controller's office in the IT unit to have consultants working and pulling the data from NYCHA's system so that we could create a nightly feed that would be updated. I just want to make it really clear that we did not, we worked with NYCHA to understand their accounting system, but we did not work with NYCHA in terms of this is full, they gave us full transparency, and we don't do anything to the numbers to get them into Checkbook. It's just simply a nightly feed from their financial system into ours. And because their financial system is completely different from the financial management system of the city, there are some different terms to learn. And for most of you, I think will have been in Checkbook at least once, kind of understand how Checkbook is. Some of this, we're just going to be going over basics so I can explain the functionality to people who may never have visited Checkbook before. And then I'm going to try to show you the differences between NYCHA's accounting system and Checkbooks a little bit so that you understand your results when you are looking in Checkbook for NYCHA data. So we're just going to start by taking a look at the functionality of Checkbook. So if you come to the top of the screen, you see there's a home button. Home will always take you to the New York City side of the world of Checkbook. So if you want to stay in NYCHA, you want to come down to this tab that says Other Government Entities. And then you just click on New York City Housing Authority. You can see that we already have New York City Economic Development Corporation in there. And it'll take you to NYCHA's page. We have captured their budget, revenue, spending, contracts, and payroll. And we're going to do a really strong focus on spending and contracts because that's the area that most people are really interested in, like where's the money going and what's being contracted to be done. So let's scroll down. We start with having these year-to-year graph presentations. As you hover over the graph, you can see the information. And then if you click on the grid view, you will be able to see the underlying data for each of the graphs. Just going to let that load. And my apologies, we're running a little slow today. Checkbook's just been running a little slower than usual. And this is the underlying, and then you can export that data if you're interested. The different graphs that we have total spending, top 10 vendors by disbursement amount, top 10 contracts by disbursement amount. This top spending area shows you where you are within the database. So we're on the spending app, and their spending year to date is $4 billion. If we come down here, we're going to break out that spending into payroll spending, contract spending, Section 8 spending, and other spending. Now let's take a look at our widgets. We have top 5 checks written in this fiscal year, top 5 vendors by spending amount, top 5 contracts by spending, spending by industries, spending by funding source, top 5 expense categories, top 5 responsibility centers. Responsibility center is, I'm actually going to read the exact definition so there's no confusion. A responsibility center is a development or department where expenses will be budgeted and recorded. Probably a new term for most of us. Great, so I'm going to go up to my top 5 checks widget. If I hit the plus button, I can see the top 150 results. I'm just going to open that up. And then if I scroll down, if I want more detailed information than this, or I'd like to narrow down my results, I can go to a details page. It's letting it load. There we go. Our detailed page will take us to a narrow down faceted search page, which becomes very useful when you're looking at big groups of data to be able to narrow down to more specifically what you think you might be trying to drill down on. Just give a second for the page to load.
So Nicole, we do have one question about where would technology fall under computers, printers, et cetera. So somewhere along the line, I guess we can
Okay.
take a look at that.
Okay, so finally our page is starting to load. So we can then narrow down by a particular type of agreement, a purchase order. We could narrow down on a contract ID. We could narrow down on document ID, which would be a check number. We can do whether it's Section 8 housing or not. We can narrow down by a vendor. And then once we're done narrowing down what we specifically would like to see, we can export all of our data into an Excel document. So let's just go back to home for a second. So the way we work it is we go from the NYCHA wide down to vendor. So if, say, I wanted to see, and sorry, we went all the way home, so let me go back to NYCHA. So say I wanted to see a particular vendor that works with NYCHA, and I want to see all of their business. So I just click on a vendor, or I can look up that vendor. The page is going to refresh, and all the data is now going to update just to be about that specific vendor for NYCHA. So we can see that this vendor has 183.9 million in spending. We can see their checks. We can see their expense categories and which department or development received whatever they were delivering. So let's take a look at contracts. I'm going to go back to home for NYCHA. And I'm going to click on the contracts domain. Page refreshes for contracts. We can see that there are 156 billion in 15.6. I need my glasses today. 15.6 billion in registered contracts. We have a year-to-year comparison between the types of contracts. Hovering over shows you the numbers. Then we have top 10 vendors by current amount. Top 10 blanket agreements by current amount. And then top 10 responsibility centers by current amount. If the responsibility center is a housing development or development, it will generally match with the name of the development. So Gowanus, Nostrand, names of developments. Then as we come down here to our widgets, we've got our top 5 blanket agreements. top 5 modifications to agreements. What's nice about the modification feature is you can see how a contract is progressing, how much bigger it's getting over time, or if it's getting less over time. Top 5 planned agreements, top 5 planned agreement modifications, top 5 purchase orders, top 5 vendors, top 5 award methods, top 5 departments, top 5 responsibility centers, contracts by industry, and contracts by size. Just like in the other area, I can hit the plus button and that'll give me 150 records, or I can hit details and go to a narrow down faceted search, and everything is exportable. Another way I could look for information is, say I already know what contract I want to look for, or I already know what I'm trying to find. So I could go into the smart search bar and start typing in a number of an agreement. So let me just do a and click search. And they didn't find my results, so that's interesting. I might have typed it in wrong. Let's do this again. There we go. And then you can see, I can see either contracts or spending against this contract. I can look through all the different transactions one by one, and I can export my results into a CSV file. Another thing we could do advanced search. So I'm just going to click on advanced search. I'm going to make sure that I'm on NYCHA. And again, I can put in a contract ID. I can put in a vendor if I'm interested in a specific responsibility center and finding out about one of the developments. I can click on that to see all of theirs and then click submit. And I apologize for how long it's taking to look through the database. Sorry, folks. I'm gonna take us out of this just so that we can move on. So if we're working in advanced search, you can get up to 200,000 rows of information in any given Excel, but you may need a lot more. You may need a lot more results. Maybe you did a search that is all years and it's very large. So I can come up here to this tab that says data feeds and click on it. And then I'm going to look for spending transactions. I would like them in an Excel file and hit next. I'm going to make sure that I'm looking for NYCHA information. And then I'm going to say, I'd like to see all spending for all years. I'm going to click add and then submit. So what will happen is, because this is a very large, there's 30 million transactions for all years. So I obviously can't get it all at once. It's going to do a big batch job in the background to pull my results. So in the meantime, I'm going to put my email address below. I'm going to hit confirm. And then they are going to send me an email. In that email, they'll send me a tracking number. And when my file is ready, I can put my tracking number into this box over here and hit go, and my files will materialize. So if you have a very large file that you're trying to get information out of, you definitely want to use data feeds. Another aspect of data feeds is we have the API tab. So some people actually want to create feeds that feed off of Checkbook, pulling information from Checkbook directly. You can create an API off of any of our different areas, different domains, just by clicking on the domain you're interested in. And then you'll get all of the information you need to create that API. Okay, let's go back.
So Nicole, we have a couple questions if you
Yes.
want to entertain those now.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the first one here would be, are we able to see details by development? I'm assuming development would be responsibility center?
Would be a responsibility center. So you would
Yes.
go to advanced search, check for that advanced under responsibility center, look for the name of the responsibility center that matches your development, and you can search by doing that.
Okay. Next question, are we able to search by program? For example, contracts issued to support the implementation of the trust or blueprints. So by program.
We have accounting layers that go to program and project. Is that the way to get your information? I'm not sure. So if we could sideline this and I could talk to you after, we could go into it together and try to find the information you're looking for.
All right, and then last question, this is all from Ramona. Last question has to do with, it's probably more on the budget and revenue side, I'm gonna make the assumption. Question is, are we able to search for executed versus allocated funds? For example, NYCHA is only spending 6% of the money City Council gives them. How can we see what money has been allocated versus what was spent? What other information will we have regarding the funds received by NYCHA versus those executed?
Let's finish up with the demo. I think that you'll see your answers in that as we look at how their contracts are set up and the spending and how we look at the transactions. Let's just hold on to that one.
Thank you, Nicole.
Okay, so I'm just going to bring up some logic for NYCHA contracts and spending, because it's different from FMS, and we just want to be able to explain to you how to look at the material. So I'm going to pull up. So this is, sorry, one second. Oh, this is fine. Okay. So we're going to take a look at the spending logic in Checkbook. So we're going to start with a payment to a vendor. In this case, can you see my visualization? Here it is. Here we go. Can you see this? Okay. So we're going to start by looking at a check written to Richards Plumbing and Heating, Inc. The contract number is BA 1627036. So what's different about NYCHA than the city is that on a check could be covering many invoices from many different contracts. It doesn't have to just be covering one contract, one invoice. So in this situation, this contract is now covering payments for 1, 2, 3, 4 different invoices. So these 4 different invoices are then broken out into line numbers. So invoice 1, which is this one that ends in 473, has 2 lines and 1 distribution. The first line on that invoice is a $364.92 distribution, and the second one is a little over $1,000. And those distributions are going to the Kingsborough Consolidated Responsibility Center. Then we have invoice number 2, which also has 2 lines, ends in 474. And it's got, again, one distribution, two different types, different lines, one distribution each, going to Kingsborough Consolidated. And then finally, then we've got our invoice ending in 516. It also has two lines, one distribution, and this is going to the Hughes Apartments. Sorry, those are three different invoices. That's one invoice, three lines, one distribution going to the Hughes Apartments. And then we finally have the last invoice that has one line, one distribution going to Ocean Hill Consolidated. So how does this look in Checkbook? I'm going to move this over. I'm going to go to advanced search. Great. I'm going to put in that contract ID. Sorry for the wait. My advanced search is not working today. Okay, folks, I apologize for this. This is going to be a problem. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to export my results into an Excel file. There were 3,520 results for this particular contract. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I know my EFT number. I know what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to filter my results. And I'm going to search by my EFT. Okay. So all one check, all covering the same contract. So the check amount is for the overall, that was the one price that was put on this check. The amount spent are the breakouts of each of those lines from the invoice that went to the responsibility center. So this is what actually was spent at each responsibility center. This will generally add up to this. So this is very different from our regular spending transactions because the amount spent is what you want to add up, not the check amount. We go down to a deeper level with NYCHA. And here you can see which responsibility centers they went to. And like I said about program and project, they're often not filled out. So that might not be the course that you need to find a specific program. The accounting program line is different than what you're thinking of as a program line. So we'll have to go over that. Okay. So that's when you have one payment going to multiple, they're covering multiple invoices and being distributed to multiple responsibility centers. I'm going to bring up a different example. Now here we have a different example where it covers many invoices. The check is large. It's for $702,682.83. It's covering many, many invoices. You can see each of the individual distributions all ending at one responsibility center. So that's a lot easier to look at than maybe some, because it's more what we do expect to look at. So let's take a look at that in Checkbook. Again, I apologize for this being so slow.
There's a question while we're doing this. The question is, there's no detail, correct? Only a dollar amount. Well, that prior example you looked at actually said it was for Richard's Plumbing
Yes.
vendor name. So there was some work done by the plumber on those housing units, those responsibility centers.
I have some pre-downloaded ones that might make this easier. So I'm just going to take a second. Sorry. Okay, we got it. So we're going to download our results. So this is the example we used that was everything. It's one check. It's going out. It's covering many, many different invoices. Overall check amount versus the amount spent. So this is each line going to Richard's Plumbing. We can see which responsibility centers were serviced. My expense category is fire safety, so it had something to do with the fire systems.
And Nicole, open up column N a little bit, see if there's anything else. It says various, I'm just curious on the purpose. If there's anything more on that for this inspection?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so the purpose field too should give you some information.
Correct. And then again, if you want to find out, if you want to add all of this up in your spreadsheet, you definitely want to use the amount spent column, not the check column, but the amount spent column, because that's what's going to give you a true look at the total amount spent. And then you can see that the sum is 183. Well, maybe, sorry, no, it's 1.8 million. If you were to look at the original contract and what it's for, then you would know how much they've spent versus how much the contract is for. So let's look at this same example, but on the contract side. So I'm going to copy.
So let me address a question that's in the Q&A side. All right. There's a question about I think this question's answered, but I'm going to make sure that. So the question is, can you find out developments and expenditures for contracts? So I think that the responsibility center is the area he's looking for, and we just showed you an example of how a responsibility center, you can look at specific accounting items against that particular payments against that particular for that expense center. So I think that one's answered. So this is for Dana. So I'm just give me a positive feedback if we answer your question, Dana. Nicole, your thing came up, so you can go.
Okay. Hold on one second. Okay, so I'm still having problems with my advanced search at the moment. Just gonna refresh my screen and hopefully that'll.
So maybe later on, when you're done with your demo, we want to do an advanced search on a contract purpose.
Sure.
Do something like that. We could pick consulting services as or design services as an example.
Okay, so this is that same spending that we just looked at. We're gonna look at it from the contract side. It's really rough when it's not working well. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna export my results. So in the contract area, a really important difference to look at too is that these contracts go out in different releases. So knowing your release is really helpful. So here's what I really want to show you. This, for the first line, will always be the record type is agreement. When you're at the agreement line, it's like you're looking at the higher up level of the contract. So when you're on the agreement line, you see the number of releases on an agreement. It's got a lot of releases on this agreement. You can see what the release numbers are, then what the line numbers associated. Then there's an item description. Some monthly inspections of the stamp pipe. You know, the quantity that had to have been done there. We show you the shipment number it went out in. We show you which responsibility center received the service. And then we've got our start and end dates. Remember, at the agreement level, so start and end dates for the contract. And then the lines underneath the agreement level are the actual, for each release, you will have a current amount, an original amount, and an invoiced amount. It's different than the overall contract. The overall contract, the agreement level, that's what the contract is worth. And for release 1, these are the items that went out and the amounts. So when I'm on this side, I really separate things out into the release. I really try to know, like, I try to look at different, you have to look at it by the release number so that you can identify, you can keep same items with same things. Does that make sense? Is anyone confused by that? So as you see, you'll see agreement, and then it's release 1 and information for the different lines on that release. It's very different from the way we look at an export and checkbook. It was very difficult to figure out how to show very specifically where things are going in NYCHA, not just what was purchased or what work was being done, but exactly where it was being done and how many items were purchased. So they really gave us this crazy amount of information and drilling down, ability to drill down to see who received exactly what. Any questions at this point?
Yeah, we have a couple. So go back to the homepage on NYCHA. So let's look at let's go look at fiscal year 20. Let's see, 21 to 21. So we get a full year.
Okay.
But the question is on, how much, what's the, what does not just, how much does New York City spend on contracts every year? Not NYCHA, how much what, NYCHA or New York City? I mean, NYCHA is what? NYCHA spends how much?
For 21, it was 15.3 billion.
15.3 billion is what NYCHA spends for contracts. And NYCHA's data is available. It's updated daily. So we get nightly feeds that come in for all the various the business domains. Or maybe we're about let's say 2 days behind when it actually hits.
Yeah.
When it hits NYCHA. When NYCHA makes an update or makes a payment, 2 days later, we'll see it in Checkbook.
So there was a search we wanted to do, correct? For contracts. So let's find that.
Yeah.
I want to look at the purpose field.
Yeah. Consult, say design services. Let's try that one. That's Joshua was asking that question. While that's spinning, we had another question about the NYCHA requirements. Is NYCHA subject to the requirement that they compare at least 3 contractors? Does Checkbook include info on the request for proposal process? If not, where would we look to get that information?
There's an important thing that we skipped doing, which was looking at the contract ID page. So we'll do that. So you can see everything that you can see on a contract.
Okay, thank you.
So this was based on the purpose field saying design. Sorry. I'm going to refresh my page. Okay.
Come on.
Yes, there we go. Get over to our purpose line. So I think that that's probably exactly what you're looking for. These are all contracts dealing with architectural and engineering design services.
And if you go back the other way, you can see the responsibility centers that the work is being done on.
Yeah.
Think the other way. Keep going. There you go, responsibility centers.
Right. So you can take a look at that and see who's getting what. And then you should be able to even see down to this is where we do have some project program information. We don't always, but and you can see what different programs this is coming from. Okay. Any other questions to how to look at contract information in Checkbook? Oh, I wanted to show you a contract ID page. So let's just click on this one. Okay, so here we can see all the general information about the contract, and you can see the award method. This was a competitive RFP. So any contract that you're looking at, you can come to the general information, find out the award method, find out the contract type, the purpose, start, end date, approved date, sometimes contracts get canceled and we would have a cancel date there. If a contract was canceled, like say it hit Checkbook and then it got canceled, that's when you would see a cancel date. And the status. And then if you come down here, you can look at the contract history. You can see if any changes or adjustments happened on the contract. Every time you get a new version number, something has changed on the contract. In this particular example, whatever it is that's changed, it's not the, in any of these versions, it was not a money difference in the contract. It was probably something else. And then you can see, you can go down here and look at all of the different associated releases against that contract. And you can see what responsibilities they went to for each of those releases. You can see the release history. And you can actually even see each one of the spending transactions based on the release. So your contract ID page is a fountain of information for you for any given contract.
So what we don't have on here, like, is the, I guess, the number of vendors and stuff that actually bid on the contracts. Scroll up a little bit, right? It's a little bit different than what we have in.
No, but I believe that you can tell what kind of
the
bidding
award
process
method,
took place based on the award method.
The award method, okay, competitive RFP, okay. Very good.
Okay.
There's a question, there's two questions, Nicole. All right, first one, the design services Josh asked about is supposed to be an internal NYCHA role. Is there a way to see when NYCHA is choosing to contract these roles out?
Not through Checkbook.
Not through Checkbook.
That's an internal process that you'd have to query NYCHA itself.
Okay, and then the other question we have is under active expense contracts of a particular company, some contracts show end date as a year ago. Why the contract still designated as active?
It may be that they just rolled it into another year and they're still using the contract. Maybe they extended the date and they didn't change that information as it came over to us. There are multiple reasons why it might not have, or it might show as ended and it's still functioning. And again, for a particular example, you might have to ask NYCHA.
Yeah, wasn't there a conversation we had where they were saying they had some of these projects have like a punch list and they're waiting for the vendor to finish that punch list before they close out the contract?
That's true too.
Yeah, so it depends. It might be waiting on the vendor to do their final work before the final payment is issued.
Also, final payments can be issued because NYCHA has, they withhold about 10% from every contract. That final payment that goes to the vendor is withheld until all the work is done and it's done satisfactorily. Somebody asked about this in our last one. Do we show it? We do show it, but we just show that the payment is made at some point to that vendor. We don't specifically tie it back to the like you'll just see that it was a bank transaction from the bank that holds the 10% to that vendor at some time in the future.
Okay, so I think I addressed all the questions that we have here. Are there any other questions that we could answer for you?
If you have, sorry.
Now I'm going to say, hopefully this is helpful to you guys.
And if you have any further questions or need any other guidance, please, email me. If you have specific queries you're looking for, I can help. So I'll add my email to the chat.
Oh, hold it. Okay, I just saw something here from Ramona. Can you go over the competitive RFP method again? How we get there?
Sure. So when you want to know about the method of a contract bidding process, you want to just click on the contract or put the contract into advanced search, however you want to do it, to be taken to the contract ID page, which is this. And under award method, you can tell exactly what the bidding process was based on the award method under the general information on that contract.
Does our advanced search have that, one of the options to pick
Yep,
select? one?
you can do that on advanced search as well. We can go to advanced search. There are many ways to do things in Checkbook. You could also go to a narrowed down faceted search page and probably do it by award method. But still, if you're going to do it by award method, you're still probably going to, it would be easier to start with the contract than start with the award method, because then you're just going to get everything that was a competitive RFP for a time period, rather than just having for that contract, what was the award method.
But this, by hitting the award method, you can see all the award methods that NYCHA uses, and we have all this information in the system.
Yeah. These are all the different award methods. Any other questions?
One last question. What is the difference between an expense contract and a revenue contract?
So an expense contract is just money going out of NYCHA, and a revenue contract would be any money that comes into NYCHA from anything that they're doing. Like, I'm not sure what, like a grant would be a revenue category for NYCHA.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you all for joining us. Again, if you think of a question after this, please feel free to reach out, email me, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, guys.